Hi, everyone. My name is Ariana. I'm the executive director for the Federation of Community Councils. We have a small group today, so feel free to, get your questions noodling. Um, just before we get started, I am going to share our group agreements. These agreements, the Local Lens series are a space for learning and conversation among members of community councils and the public. The goal of the sessions is to dive deep into various governmental structures within the municipality of Anchorage. Everyone joining agrees to treat each other with respect, recognize our neighborhood's unique qualities and the diverse viewpoints of their residents, allow everyone a chance to participate. And then some logistics, please stay muted unless you are called on to ask a question. You can message within the chat with questions, or you can do a hand raise. Um, Please stay on topic and be concise, and then just be considerate of time. Smaller groups generally, we can be more open with our time, which is great. That being said, we are here to talk capital improvement projects, talk about what they are, why they're important, how they might affect you. And yeah, we are going to start with Chelsea Ward Waller with PM&E.
Awesome. Thanks, Ari. Let me just get my screen share going here. Okay, are you all seeing that?
Almost. There it is.
Okay, and you're seeing the presentation, not my notes. Perfect. Okay, great. Let's get going. So I'm here to talk the Capital Improvement Program, which is what CIP stands for, Capital Improvement Program Coordinator for the public works departments of the municipality. And there are several in there, includes project management and engineering, which is where I'm actually housed as a department, traffic department, street maintenance, so on and so forth. So that's where I'm coming from, and you'll hear from Parks and also from DOT, but we're all a little bit separate. So I'm going to talk about our project development process, how projects come to be, where projects start with needs identification, some of our annual programs that help us do some of our generally smaller projects, project evaluation, timeline for the whole CIP process, and then end with some of our Plan 2025 construction projects as a sneak peek. And so we'll dive right in. This is just a fun before and after of projects that we do. You may know that DOT does a lot of projects in the municipality, and so does the municipality. And so this is one of our local roads, 30th Avenue, that the municipality has jurisdiction over. And so one of the questions we get asked a lot is, why isn't my project that I submitted through the CIP process or that I nominated or whatever, why isn't it done yet? And that's because, just like building a home or going through lots of different planning processes, there are lots of steps before a project can get constructed. Multiple design phases that projects go through, which means that like the plans get circulated to other agencies to make sure that everybody's on the same page. Then we go into right-of-way and utility agreements before we can hit the construction phases. And depending on the project, our largest projects have multiple construction phases. So that's one of the reasons why projects take a very long time. Okay, how do I identify I have a need? How does the municipality find out about all these needs? And the short answer is that lots of ways. Community council surveys, which are just opened last week, are one of the ways we hear about community needs. We hear from assembly members, legislators, and constituents on an ongoing basis. There are administration priorities that define certain projects. We have adopted plans and programs that identify projects. Sometimes we have acts of nature or emergent situations, like you may remember several years ago, we had a culvert collapse under Northern Lights Boulevard, was a big one that needed to get addressed right away. And then we also work with street maintenance, who, they're out on the streets all the time and know the conditions and dynamics going on. And then we also rely on this GATSB, which is a funny acronym, but basically it just gives us a road quality, road condition score that tells us, where do we need to focus our work. And then we're working on creating a project scoping checklist that helps us sort of hone in all these different needs and better identify projects that are more urgent that need to get done sooner. So those are the big bucket needs, but then we also have programs that help move projects forward other than those requests that come in, and those include safe routes to school projects, traffic calming, ADA. We have some watershed management projects, pedestrian facilities, on and on. So lots of different ways that we can fund projects. But those programs tend to be smaller scale projects. They don't tend to be our full, roadway reconstruction, for example. That would be its own project. This might be like adding a sidewalk or improving a single storm drain or something like that would come out of a program. So once we get all these needs, we're looking through all the projects. We go through an evaluation process to determine what's our highest need. On the right side of the screen, you can see the criteria that we're looking at for each project. And we bring together representatives from all these different departments to review all these criteria for each project. And that helps us determine a score. And that scoring becomes sort of our general ranking. And then, as always, there's politics in play. So certain projects jump the line for political reasons, or again, acts of nature, that kind of thing. Things can shuffle around. But this is generally how our scoring process happens. And I do just want to put our capital improvement program, at least in terms of the streets and roads, in context with all these other funding programs. So these are the projects in the municipality's CIP that are generally funded with bond funding. But there's also federal funding that goes to our local metropolitan planning organization, which is AMATS. And their short range program is the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Program. That's what they're going to fund in the next 4 years. They have a long range plan, which is the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which looks at projects through 2050. And then I think you're also going to hear shortly from Mark, the statewide Transportation Improvement Program. So that's the whole state's looking at, the DOT is looking at what projects are going to happen in the next 4 years. Okay, so this is our annual, the CIP is part of the municipality's budget process. So it's an annual program that we go through, we start by preparing all the projects that we think should go into the program. And a lot of those, again, have come from needs identification with the community. Then we put out a survey to the community councils. This slide was our ambitious slide because we were aiming to get those surveys out in January. Like I said, they just got launched last week, so we're a little bit behind, but we did move them up last year. They went out in April. So we're at least making baby steps towards heading towards this is our goal timeline. And part of the reason for that is to give community councils more time. And part of the reason for that is also to give departments more time once community councils are done with that information from community councils before we need to get our sort of draft project list ready to go to the administration, who then does their tweaking before they send it to the assembly. And as you may know, the assembly does the final approval of the budget process. And there at the bottom, you can see the legislative project request submitted to CAPSIS. So I said the CIP is mostly bond-funded program projects. We also include projects that we ask the state legislature for funding for. And those are projects that might be just too large for us to fund through bonds, or maybe a political pet project of an assembly member or administration or community council. And we work to get those submitted to the legislature because we can't fund them through the bond program, but we know that they're important to some portion of the community.
And
So,
Chelsea, this
yeah.
calendar, if this was for this year,
Mhm.
this meant that we would have started in December 2024, and then it would go to the legislative CAPSIS project in January 2026, correct? So for
Correct.
context for people looking at this calendar.
Yep, that's why it's at the bottom there, is because it'll come after that. The whole CIP is approved by the Assembly at the end of the budget process in November. Yep, thank you for clarifying that. And then this slide, I'm not going to hang out for too long. It just basically says the exact same thing the last one did in a different format, knowing that people have different learning styles. I'll let you come back and pause on that one in the recording if you need to, but we'll keep going here in the interest of time. This is what the capital improvement budget book looks like. That's our cover page, which our OMB department puts a lot of time and energy into making it very pretty for a department that does a lot of work behind the scenes. I think they care a lot about making the budget book look nice. And the CIB, so the capital improvement budget, is the first year of the capital improvement program, which is a 6-year program. So it's basically the budget, and then the 5-year program after that is the CIP. And it was largely, the proposed CIP was largely approved by the Assembly last November, other than these adjustments that you can see on the right side. And all of that is available at muni.org/OMB. This is what the Community Council survey page looks like. And if you are more deeply involved with that, I hope we are in touch soon and I can help you dig into that more. But for those that maybe are looking at a surface level or more want to know, what has my Community Council provided in the past in terms of priorities, you can go to this page. And again, it's available through that OMB website, but I can drop the exact link in the chat here in a little bit. You can go and look at that second tab on the top there next to the 2025 survey results. If you go to archive of prior year surveys, you can see.
I'm not seeing the shared screen.
Did I mess that up? Is anybody else not seeing it?
But it's still there.
I still see it.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'm almost done, so you're not missing too much on my end.
Okay.
Oh, and maybe my computer is frozen. Maybe that's why. Nope, it's just trying to open the surveys.
Oh,
Good.
I found it. Thank you.
Okay, great. If you want to know more about sort of all the projects that the project management and engineering department has in the works, you can go to muni.org/PME projects. And this website is a wealth of information, but because of that, it's also a little bit challenging to navigate. So if you get here and you're like, I don't know how to find any project that I'm looking for, feel free to give me a call and I'm happy to help you navigate it. There's these filters on the left-hand side that can be very handy, but also relatively confusing. And then just also note that there are tabs along the bottom. So if you find a project that you're interested in and you're clicking on it on the map, you have to go down to that tab on the bottom, that single project summary, to get the written details about the status or the information about it. So we're working on making this more user-friendly. It's one of those tools where it's trying to do a lot of things for a lot of people. So we're working on it. But in the meantime, feel free to give me a call and I can help with it. As I said, I was going to share a little sneak peek of our 2025 construction projects. Some of these are passing over from last year, but many of them are new. And as you can see, many of them are pending our bond approval, which we will see what voters think at the April election. And then I know I'm going over on my time, so I'm going to be brief here. This is my last slide. Just wanted to show a little bit of history of our capital improvement program funding. Again, sort of back to that question I brought up at the beginning of the presentation, why isn't my project done? Why is it taking so long? As you can see, back in the early 2010s and even before that, we got a lot of state funding through the legislature. And that pretty much dried up starting in 2015. For many years, we've started to see a little trickle again. but our last year we got a large federal grant. Fingers crossed it's still going to come through, which helped us with a little bump in our total funding. But again, the more funding we have, the more projects we can deliver. And that's basically our limiting factor for the most part. So with that, I will pass it along and try to get out of screen share.
Thanks, Chelsea. Really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And then for a similar but slightly different, we have Mark Eisenman. I think I said that right, from DOT&PF.
Close enough.
Let
me let's see. I don't know where it's going to pop up, so let me share my screen and turn this on. Oh, you know what? How's that? Can you guys see my presentation?
Yes.
Oh, good. So Chelsea hit on just briefly touched on some of the stuff I'm going to talk about, which is great because there was no coordination. So I want to talk to you about kind of how the DOT federal, how the DOT side kind of works transportation wise, and why community council CIP surveys and the CIP list is important for that side of it. Let's see here. That's my slide. So I'm gonna give a really high level view of federal funding in the state and how DOT uses that. So most of the state funding that comes into DOT that we use for surface transportation, and that includes roads, pathways, trails, motorized and non-motorized, comes from Title 23 funds, and that's the Federal Highways Administration code title. So the rules we have to follow, that sort of thing, comes from that area of federal code. Every so often, Congress will pass a very major transportation bill. IIJA was the last one. And now, as we have a new current administration, they're currently, from what I've heard, working on something different. So, but we're still working under the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. Federal funds are managed within the state. We have a 4-year, we have a long-term plan, what we call the LRTP, but that's more of a policy document, not a planning document. So it states what we want to do, like what our priorities are. But to manage the federal money we get in, we have to be fiscally constrained with it. Meaning we have to actually show where we're going to use our money and plan for it. And so we have a statewide transportation improvement plan, which we call the STIP. Transportation planners love their acronyms, so I'm just going to warn you, we have a lot of them. But anyways, so the STIP is a 4-year plan, fiscally constrained, meaning that we kind of estimate how much money we're going to get. We kind of know from previous years, and we put projects out, and we show how that money is going to be spent in the next 4 years. So, and this is on the federal fiscal year. So it starts in October 1. Federal funds within Anchorage are managed through the local Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO, which is AMATS, which stands for the Anchorage Metropolitan Area Transportation Solutions. And we have and I just want to kind of define what MPOs are. We had a peer exchange not too long ago, and one of the things I got out of that is we had a peer exchange with Minnesota and North Dakota, and they said, transportation planning is kind of a black hole when it goes to the general public. Not a lot of people really know what we do or how, they see a construction project out there, but they don't know how that happened, all the work that went behind that. And so what an MPO does is it's a federally mandated transportation policy making organization between local governments and state government. And AMATS is pretty unique. I found out that we only have one entity or two entities. We have the municipality of Anchorage and state DOT, basically. Most MPOs are made up of multiple organizations, cities, boroughs. In lower 48, you've got counties. Tribal organizations. Anchorage is Anchorage is pretty unique. An MPO is federally mandated for any urbanized area over 50,000. But when you reach a certain threshold of 200,000, you become a different kind of MPO called a transportation management area, or TMA, and that comes with other things you have to do as well. But I won't get too deep into it. So AMETS creates a long-term plan called the MTP, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and the current plan is the 2050. And the 2050 is not fiscally constrained. It has a lot of projects in it, and there's a whole process. The 2050 recently was open for a call for nominations. And projects are nominated to the MTP from a variety of sources. Anybody could go and nominate a project into the MTP, but community council lists get added. The municipalities CIP lists for, if they're looking for federal funding for projects that are eligible. And those projects are screened and scored and then become part of, not all of them make it into the MTP. But in order to make it in to AMET's short-term plan, which is called the Transportation Improvement Plan, which is the TIP, which is just like the STIP, it has to be in the MTP. So in order for your project to move from this long-term plan of list of hopeful projects into the TIP, which is actually which is fiscally constrained as well, and it means your project's going to move forward through development. And then those projects that make it into the TIP are incorporated into the statewide STIP by reference. So, and then and I should point out too, I don't think I touched on this, but it's only federal money that shows up in the AMETS TIP. So local money that's used through the municipality would not be part of this. But any project, any service transportation project within Anchorage that is using federal money will be in the TIP, if that makes sense. And so why is CIP, the Community Council CIP list important, especially for DOT? It shows local community identified needs, right? Who knows better than what you need than you? So we looked at the community councils and the municipality to find local problems. That's there. I mean, Chelsea hit on a bunch of other ways we find problems that we need, and DOT has many of those same resources that we use to find projects for the STIP. But yeah, we look for local support and local input. And then, when you put it on your list and you show you prioritize it, it shows local support, which is really important for moving projects forward. So I get lots of questions on how do I get a project into the STIP or into the TIP, or how do I get a how do I get a sidewalk? How do I get a crosswalk? How do I get my road fixed? And it really starts with the community councils, working with your local community council to get it on your CIP list. Advocation, you need a champion. You need somebody to be noisy about it. You need to work with your local assembly members and your local state legislators to make it a priority. Not everything is going to get funded. Not everything, it takes a lot of work to get something moving. We have a lot of needs in the state. So I did want to point out that the MTP, the TIP, and the STIP are not stasis documents. They get updated all the time. And currently all three are open for public comment. So I did not put links here, I'm sorry, but you can easily find these by Googling them or going to the AMETS website or the state STIP website. And you can look at all the documents and all the amendments. And if you have comments, we greatly appreciate them. I will say, I really appreciate the positive comments, because lots of people show up for the negative comments. But if you really, really support something or you like something, it's always great to show that support for it. So some things to consider, because you're going to say, hey, Mark, my project's been on the CIP list for 10 years and nothing's happened. Why can't I get it moving? And, there are lots of needs. We have lots of needs within the city, within the state. We have limited funding, and it's finite, right? We have to be fiscally constrained with what we can spend, and we don't, it's not it's it's not never ending, even though sometimes some of the numbers seem like it's a lot of money. The federal funding that we use requires a match. We get a really great match rate. It's 9.03% for surface transportation. So we basically, it's 9 cents on the federal dollar, which helps with the state. Some projects in the list compete not just locally, but for statewide funding, because there's lots of different funding sources, lots of different ways something could get funded. And I didn't go into any of those details. I try to keep it pretty high level here, but and then projects tend to be very expensive, especially when you start. Even just a simple like repaving of a road is millions and millions of dollars. So something that can be considered is, projects add up, and not everything is gonna. And then, like if you want to add a sidewalk or repair a sidewalk, costs just incur in basic planning too, as we're developing projects. And something to consider is administrations and priorities change, right? So we have a new mayor, we have a new president, we'll have a new governor in a little over a year. So the priorities that those politicians had are not the same as their predecessors, and so that can be good or bad. And that's all I've got. So I will stop sharing.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. And then community council surveys include more than just our roadways. They also include parks. And so we have Taylor Keegan from Parks and Rec to share about how CIP surveys connect with the Parks Department.
Great. Thank you. My name is Taylor Keegan. I am the superintendent of Parks and Recreation. And so, Ariana, thank you so much for having me, and Mark and Chelsea as well, to discuss the process. And I'm going to give the same presentation that I gave to the assembly work session. So are you guys able to see the presentation right now? Did I share the right screen? Okay, yep. Perfect. So what we're going to talk about is the Capital Improvement Program, the CIP, and this Capital Improvement Budget, the CIB, as well as touch on the state of play, which is evidence-based strategies for inclusive play that was developed in 2018. So opening up here, Capital Improvement Program and Budget. Parks gets a lot done with a relatively speaking little bond. And really how we've done this in the past, or how we've selected the items that are on the CIP and CIB, have to do with a few different factors. One is spreading the love. So we like to be strategic about making sure capital improvement projects are spread across the municipality of Anchorage. That way we can engage voters and make sure that there's interest for folks across the municipality and different community councils. Of course, we like to leverage outside funds, and this could be through the Anchorage Park Foundation, our nonprofit private partner, legislative grants, or AMATs, as Mark was describing, through the TIP and the STIP. Ultimately, also community engagement. Volunteers, cooperative use agreements, and community advocates also elevate projects for quick wins. And then finally, health, safety, welfare. I think Chelsea called it an act of nature. What needs to get done? Has a bridge collapsed, and is an asset significantly past its useful life? So that's kind of how items have been put on the CIP and CIB prior to me taking this position about a year and a couple months ago. Today, we have tried to formalize these focus areas and blend them with the PM&E scoring matrix to really help facilitate transparency and develop a record of need. The 2025 CIP, the matrix was used and completed by internal staff and managers, as well as surveys done with our operations and maintenance group. The 2026 CIP will include staff from PM&E as well as the Anchorage Park Foundation to help develop a more well-rounded scoring. The scoring matrix categories include the following: consistency with adopted plans, public support, support by the administration, and that would be the mayor's office, as well as the Parks and Recreation Department. Is the project supported by the community council and elected officials such as the assembly and your state representatives? Operation maintenance, what are the impacts to O&M? What do those external funding and partnerships look like? What is the environmental impact of the project? Does this project support existing infrastructure? Our 2006 park plan really highlighted that the community wanted our department to prioritize taking care of what we have. So this scoring is to reflect that. Also, severity of need. This really speaks to that health, safety, welfare. Is this a dangerous thing that needs to be repaired? And then finally, population served and park type. AR 2024-323S was discussed at the assembly level and passed that really wanted departments to start looking at the population served and the amount of people that any project serves. So we incorporated that into our scoring matrix. I want to also stress that what the matrix helps do is make sure that no individual person or single category can really determine a department priority. And then also scores are aggregated. So each person scores individually. The scores are then aggregated and averaged, and that's how you get your final score. The scores presented in these slides are just me riffing, and they may not even be my final scores, but they're just an example. So don't worry if something jumps out. Okay, first park. Forsyth Park is a neighborhood use park in South Anchorage. This park is in desperate need of rehabilitation of a bridge, a trail, and wayfinding. This bridge currently cannot accommodate our trackless equipment, which is it's a piece of equipment that removes snow. It's quite heavy, and this is on a non-motorized transportation corridor that we maintain snow on. So it makes it really difficult and also risky to remove snow in the area. Playground equipment is fairly new. It's in good condition. The community council requested that we give that tennis court a little TLC and add pickleball lines. So that's kind of the overview. How does this play into the matrix? There is no recent or existing plan. So we would have to go through a site plan, so that gets half points. We did get letters of support and community council CIP survey, so that's a 5 max score. Is the project supported by the administration and staff? Very much so. Is this project supported by community councils and elected officials? Yes, again, it was ranked on that CIP pretty highly. So you can kind of see how many, if there's a project that's on the CIP community council survey and it's ranked, it really hits a lot of these numbers or a lot of these categories. Moving on, O&M impact, that new bridge and trail facilities, that would greatly improve our winter operations for snow removal. So that ranks max. External funding or partnerships, there's none currently identified. So that gets 0. Supports existing infrastructure, very much so. Full points. Environmental impact. We estimate that the construction would have small impact on natural areas. So we're just in the middle there. It wouldn't have none, but not huge impacts. Property ownership, we do own this property. So that's full points. Severity of need, that bridge, I cannot stress, it's in pretty bad shape. And then finally, population served. This gets in the middle because we have a neighborhood use park and we have low population density. So this guy's getting approximately 73. Next park, Goose Lake. If we were in person, I'd make everyone raise their hands to see who's been to these parks, but I won't make you do it today. I'm just going to assume that everyone's been to this lovely park. So it's a community use park in the UMed district of Anchorage. It hosts the Polar Bear Plunge, Haunted and Enchanted, and is a major trailhead for Chester Creek Trail. The Mayor's Marathon has also been rerouted through this park. Goose Lake facility, which is pictured here, it's in need of rehabilitation and redevelopment. It was, I believe the term is yellow tagged after the 2018 earthquake. So it is no longer a facility that's open to the public for use because of safety concerns, because there's structural compromise. There's trail and wayfinding rehabilitation that needs to happen. The playground equipment's pretty outdated and accessibility concerns exist. The parking lot and basketball court need to be resurfaced. Multiple 2024 Community Council CIP surveys scored this as a priority. So I'm not going to go through every one of these. You can kind of see that we have some higher scores happening here. Most notably, this one does have an older plan. It needs an update. Also, this is a community use larger park that serves more of a population. So we're sitting with an 81. Our third example is Didlika Park. It's a neighborhood in Northwest Anchorage in the Turnagain Community Council. The playground equipment needs some updates. This was a CIP site priority for the 2024 survey. You can see here, because it's a smaller plan or a smaller park and serves, it does have a lot of needs, but it's scored a little bit lower as we go down. The severity of need, it's not a failing bridge. It's an upgrade. It's a playground that needs updating. So in summary, Forsyth in the middle, Goose Lake 81, Didlika 61. It's so this is how we would go about then prioritizing things to get on the bond, in addition to making sure we're spreading out projects across the city. So how does get on the list? The number one thing I point people towards is the community council survey. CIP survey. Other ways include challenge grant applications, letters from community organizations or user groups. If the mayor says it's a priority, if it's brought forth by internal staff, namely like a safety hazard, health, safety, welfare. Are there opportunities outside? And then also we have a park improvement proposal, which is usually something that we start with a volunteer project for to generate momentum and interest from the community. So this is something that's on our website, and I'm happy to share that link as well. I just want to also stress that progress relies on adaptation. This is new for us, and we really want it to grow through iteration and insight. So we really do welcome questions and feedback to make this process better. Okay, how much time do I have left?
Not an incredible amount of time because I would like to get to questions, but
Okay.
a couple of minutes.
I'll zoom through this. So I'll try to take less than 2 minutes. So the second part of this is about the state of play. The state of play was developed in 2018, and it just really is to guide our perceptions of play, development, inclusion. The strategic plan goals for play is to aim to have a community use playgrounds be inclusive, all community use playgrounds be inclusive, every community council have an inclusive playground, and all playgrounds have a final score of 7 or below by 2030. What the heck is a final score? It's basically context level, like site level, and then what is happening outside of the park. So spatial level. Those two things equal final score. Higher score is less good. Here's what it looked like in 2018. Here's some maps that were part of the analysis. We looked at a lot of things like population density, populations living with a disability, proximity to resources, people per playground, and community councils. Here's the scorecard that we use to score every single playground in the municipality. And then here's where we are. Here's the status update. So we have still a lot of parks to get at or below a 7. The ones in bold are the ones that are currently in design or on the CIP. So we're really marching towards these achievements. Community use as a priority. We're trying to prioritize our more accessible, more community-based resources. So here you can see the bold ones we're marching towards are on our CIP. Every community council, I think this is relevant for this group especially. So we're aiming to have every community council have an inclusive playground. And so here, again, the ones in bold are the community councils that do not currently have an inclusive playground. And all the ones that do, except for Girdwood, because they're outside of our service area. Sorry, Girdwood. But all the ones in bold are either in design or on the CIP, except for the Charles Smith, but there's a little caveat there that I'm happy to dive into. And then finally, since 2012, we've completed 35 playgrounds and made them either level 1 or level 2 inclusive. On deck, we have 22 projects up until 2030, and then 2030 and on, we have 16 more that we know we need to develop. I just want to pause on this slide. This is all of the playgrounds that we know we need to develop. The orange indicate the ones that are currently on that on deck list. And I just want to highlight, if we were operating in a bubble, we would likely just do these guys, the highest scoring ones. But every single park with a little exclamation after it means that it was on a CIP survey. So I just want to then also just highlight how important these surveys are and the results are, and playing into how we go about making the decisions for developing the capital improvement program, plan, all the P's. They get mixed up when you get to 8 o'clock at night after a day of work. So we're working to improve our process. We have all these mechanisms. These documents are not static, and we really welcome questions and feedback. So I just want to thank you guys for having us. Thanks for sticking with me as I blasted through that. And here I am to answer any questions if folks have them. Thank you.
Thanks, Taylor. And tomorrow I will get these posted on all of the slides posted on our website and send them out to anybody who signed up to register so that people can look through them at their leisure, as well as this will be recorded and posted on our YouTube. And you posted a bunch of stuff in the chat, which I love. Does anybody have any questions for any of our lovely speakers today? Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, hi. This is probably for Chelsea. But what they call a survey isn't really a survey. It's more of a list of projects. So I'm assuming each council has to somehow make a survey out of that to distribute to their membership, and it's not the MOA that's going to create the survey that we distribute.
Ari and I were actually having a little sidebar about the history of the Community Council survey, and I wish I could answer why we call it a survey, because I agree it's not a survey. It's just a prioritized list of projects. And I apologize, we are not helping you create a survey for your own community council, but I can provide you with some suggestions on how to do that, and councils to look to, such as
I can help with that.
Perfect.
My office is doing that. And I can talk a little bit. So every council does it a little bit differently, which is why at this point, it's not a municipal survey that goes out to everybody. So some councils talk about it in their meetings. A lot of councils start with the list that they had last year because it's at least a reference point for their highest priorities. But there isn't just a municipal wide survey at this point, and not every council creates a survey to send to their membership. Sometimes it's about talking in person or having a committee work on it and then bringing it to the membership. So everybody does it a little different.
A little follow-up there is that on the one that's published right now on the website, the 2024 stuff is correct, but then when the 2025 one comes in, it doesn't just take the 2024 stuff and give it back to us. It gives us a random list of projects from all over the city. And so why is that?
So every year, departments submit lists to OMB for those projects to be in the Community Council survey. And one thing we had hoped to do for this year, and didn't quite have time, as I mentioned, we were trying to move up the timing for the survey, and our IT team needed a little bit more time to be able to make this happen. But we'd like to go back, for those that have been involved in the survey for many years ago, there used to be buckets under the priorities. So you'd prioritize like all the PM&E projects together, and then you'd prioritize the parks projects together, and then maybe like the DOT projects together. And now you just have all the projects as they are, and you prioritize parks versus roads. But one thing, if we went back to that sort of bucket option, we would also be able to provide an area-wide bucket that I think would help address this concern that many community councils, you're not alone, have, in that they see these projects that they don't think are relevant to them. Well, they're relevant to the people that are trying to make those decisions about where we're spending our money, such as OMB in particular, but also the departments that, are trying to balance area-wide needs with individual council needs. So that's why those are on there, because we want to know what people think, but we do recognize that it's a challenge for councils to prioritize something that's outside of their district over something that is in their district.
Yeah, and Taylor also had, community-wide neighborhoods versus neighborhood-only parks. right? So having those like buckets is relevant to the way you prioritize as well, right?
Yeah, and we also have area-wide items, like we will bond for athletic field safety, and so that kind of touches like a lot of the ball fields and things around town. So that's kind of like that's a beast compared to just being able to drop a pin on a map. Yeah.
Mhm.
So for 2025, then every council got the same list.
They shouldn't have.
Nope.
Okay.
You should have projects that are specific to your council, in addition to those area-wide ones. Everybody would have gotten
Okay.
the area-wide ones.
Okay.
Mark had something you wanted to add, maybe?
No, I have a question for Chelsea, actually.
I love it.
Yeah, well, it's just my lack of understanding too, because I tend to direct people that ask me for stuff. I was like, you really need to go through your community council for this. So is there a way for a community council to add something to their CIP list directly? Do they have to go through you or through?
Nope, that's part of the survey process,
Okay.
or this tool that we call the survey, this project priority ranking process. And if councils have any issues with inputting a new project, that is where I am more than happy to sit down side by side or over Teams or Zoom or whatever and
Can they
work
do
through
that
on
at
screen
any
share.
time, Chelsea?
What's that?
Can they do that at any time?
Anytime before the deadline, which as of right now is May 16th, if I remember correctly, or 19th, something like that.
So ideally, you'd like each council to rank all of those projects that are in that current list.
Ideally, yes. A lot of councils, if they're area projects, they just ask for them to be deleted, which again is why we'd like to get that bucket in there so that they're not concerned that they're competing with their more local projects. But ideally, you would rank all of them or tell us that you want them deleted or add new ones.
Any other questions from the group?
So
Okay, great.
once this is Bob, this is Bob's alter ego. I signed in using his Zoom login, so I show up as Bob. So that's why there's two. This is David Evans. So I guess there's a couple things. One is in a prior year, the Rogers Park Community Council CIP committee attempted to identify which bucket a project ought to be in, whether it was DOT or PM&E or Parks and Rec. And in some cases it's simple, but in others it's not quite so obvious. For example, sidewalks that happen to be in the DOT right-of-way would be a DOT project, not a PM&E project. And it just seems like requiring a community council to make that sort of definition is kind of pushing it a little bit. It seems like that shouldn't be a requirement for a community council to identify which bucket things ought to go into.
I don't think that is required, Dave. I think any of the fields, when you're populating a new project, I'm pretty sure any of them are optional. Obviously, the more information we get when you submit a new project, the better. But we did remove the cost fields for projects that community councils are submitting because I think that was throwing some councils off. That they didn't think that they were the subject matter experts to decide what a project would cost. I'm pretty sure, and I can double check this later or one-on-one, that you don't have to decide who's going to own a project. You just need to nominate it.
And did I hear correctly that next year then there might be buckets, and then we might have to make that call?
I mean, you could attempt to identify where it would go, but based on if we had buckets, but if you put it in the wrong bucket, we can internally work together to figure out where it would belong.
Yeah, and Chelsea would remain as a resource. So if you guys wanted to consult or reach out to a department and try to figure that out, there would be resources available to help you. I don't think you need to be on your own in that decision. We have a question from Kyle.
Hi, yes. Just to brand into capital improvement projects from the Northeast, just to recap on that survey website, from what I've been hearing, the community council is ranking each of those projects by the end of the, by the end of the year and submitting that. Question is, are we ranking each of those projects under our respective community council on that survey website?
So each community council has a certain number of logins. Usually it goes to like the president and maybe one other executive board member. And those folks are the ones that would actually be submitting the prioritized list of projects into the survey, the survey platform, the thing that we're calling a survey. But the prioritization process, as Ariana was saying before, every council does a little bit differently. I've been involved with the Airport Heights one, and we do, we bring a spreadsheet of all the projects that we think make sense to the community council that a committee has worked on, and then the council votes on that. So if you're a council member that's not on the e-board, that's how you would interact with it. But in terms of going into the survey, again, the platform, that would only happen by, a handful of individuals that have access to that. And I can give more people access to that, but I just want to make sure that I'm giving the right people that access. Does that make sense, Kyle? Did that answer your question?
Yeah, I'm tracking on that. Thank you.
Great.
Right. We have just a few more minutes left. Does anybody have any last questions?
Yeah, this is Bob. I have one more. Chelsea, you just mentioned that at Airport Heights, you basically voted on it. Was that vote done digitally through some methodology, or was that just hands raised at a community council meeting?
The vote itself was during a committee council meeting where we shared, we had shared the list at a prior meeting and talked it over and given folks like a month to look at it and then come and had the vote at the next meeting. And all of that work was preceded by a survey that we had sent out where folks could nominate new projects or provide comments on the list through a survey platform, like an actual survey platform like Google Forms. And yeah, so that was kind of like you would do for a resolution, I guess. Just not there. We just don't have a resolution. But some councils, and particularly last year, it was actually very helpful. There were a couple councils that didn't make the deadline when the survey was closed, but they did pass resolutions with their list spelled out. And so those were very helpful to be able to reference. We know that councils work on their own timelines. So anyways, it was just helpful to be able to reference those, even though we didn't have their submissions on the survey. So you can do it lots of different ways.
When the survey closes, does someone in the municipality send the surveys to the DOT, or does the DOT is it up to the DOT to ask for the survey results?
I would love to know Mark's answer to that. I don't believe it gets sent to Mark directly, but this will be my first year in this position, so maybe it hasn't in the past.
No, I don't. I've never seen them sent out to us, at least not in the planning department. But I know a lot of that stuff it might go to Starzek, who's our MPO coordinator, and Aaron Young and Alan, who is the executive director of AMATS, because those projects would be funded with AMATS funds more than likely, unless they're on the national highway system, which is another topic. But yeah.
Well, a lot
And
of
also
roads in Anchorage are on the NHS, including like a lot of roads in the Anchorage are on the NHS.
Yeah.
So even
more
things like
material
sidewalk improvements in the along NHS would really belong to the DOT, wouldn't they?
They would, yeah.
And I do know that different departments will just reference the OMB survey or the archive, especially if they haven't heard from a council in a while. They'll go back to previous older surveys as the most recent point of contact.
I guess it sounds to me like there's still kind of a hole in the chain of things between finishing the survey and getting it to either AMATS or DOT.
I know we're working on a better needs list system as well, and I'm hoping that that incorporates all the like all the CIP stuff. I do know, Bob, that when we do a project like on an NHS route, even if it's just a shave and pave, like a resurfacing, we'll look at sidewalks as part of that usually too, if they've already exist. That can be done as part of that kind of project.
And everyone's contact information is in the chat if you guys want to reach out. We're coming close to 8 o'clock. I just wanted to ask our speakers, was there any final things, maybe a project that you were, like a community project that you were most excited to see funded and completed in the recent years, or anything?
I will talk first. We completed the Taku Lake Skate Park after many, many years, which is exciting because it was not only a project that was funded by bond, but also through private fundraising through Anchorage Park Foundation. So Rasmussen participated in helping fund, and then also a local challenge grant where the skateboarding community raised $100,000. So it's like really a community-driven project, and we hired a skate-specific designer who the community is also really excited about. So we did a ribbon cutting last fall, and that was really cool and fun and exciting to be able to provide. So yeah, thanks for asking that question.
Yeah, we love seeing completed projects. Chelsea or Mark, anything on the road front?
We've got lots of projects in the works. I'm excited, particularly for this large federal grant. I hope it continues forward. Obviously, there's some uncertainty there, but that would be looking at Brokaw Street, basically nearly the full extent of Brokaw, and it'll be a many-year project. So nothing happening in the imminent future, but fun to see some federal funding coming to our local departments, not just through AMATs.
I'm excited. Did you guys get your grant agreement done for that, Chelsea?
Not yet.
Oh yeah, I got bad news on the grant front today too. So for me, I think we have a lot of planning stuff going on in Anchorage too, not just like construction projects. One of the big ones is the Sewer to Glen connector, Pell that's going on. I know it's very contentious, but for somebody I've lived here quite a while. I wasn't born here, but I've lived here 26 years. Getting the highway actually out of downtown is probably one of the things I would look forward most, like just the revitalization of what that could do for downtown and Fairview. But what that's going to look like and how that's going to come out, that's still being worked out. But I invite everybody to keep looking and commenting and paying attention to that project.
Yeah, lots of comment periods for that one, which we love. And you can check out the FCC's weekly newsletter, where anytime there's an AMAT or any sort of like comment period that's open to the public, that's citywide, we post about it there, and all the links to anybody you would want to email to do your to have your public comments. So thank you guys again so much for participating. We really appreciate it, and have a lovely evening.
Thanks.